So day one of a two-part lecture called Control Freaks. We are control freaks. Database administrators have to be control freaks. So get used to it. You are responsible for the data. You and you alone. Nobody else is responsible for the data. If you're a database administrator or even just a database, even if you're not the administrator, but you're one of the administrators, and what I'm talking about is beyond just being a database user, right? Database users typically like the salespeople and the other people in the company, like the HR people or whatever, they use the database. But if you're an administrator doing the kind of stuff we're doing, writing queries on the command line or even a workbench, you have to be a control freak. And I've told the company I used to work for right before this company, for this school, I was a database admin. I was there for like 15 years. And I even told the CEO of the company that anything to do with the database goes through me. Everything. If you have a great idea, fine. You still need to run it by me. Everything goes through me because I have to control everything. Because if I don't control it, we get corrupt data. We can. Dang humans will give you corrupt data. They will. I know I've told you guys some stories already about that. Okay, so along the way, I got the nickname Human Hater. I would start assigning my emails HH because I was so strict about the database. Here's another thing to know about databases. If it's in the database and you're the administrator, you know about it. Like people's salaries, you can see it if it's in the database. If your company stores credit cards, you can see the credit card numbers. Now, there are laws about storing credit card numbers that make it to where no company wants to store them. They usually work with a third party, that's all they do, right? So like the company I worked for, they didn't store credit cards. Also, the salaries, I didn't see them because they were stored in QuickBooks. And I didn't have access to QuickBooks. Only the accountants did, right? So there are things like that. But if it's in the database, you can see it. And so you have to have some serious level of integrity. You have to be trustworthy and be trusted with that kind of data. And if you're entrusted with that kind of data, sorry to quote it, but with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And that power, knowing all that kind of data, you have to be responsible for it. So you have to be a control freak. We're going to look at 4 things that help us be better control freaks, okay? 2 of them today, 2 of them after Thanksgiving. So let's kind of recap real quick, super fast, what we know about what we can do to databases, right? We can create, read, update, delete. And we've said this a few times. What are the things I can create, read, delete, and update? What are they? Tables, records, databases, fields. Those are the 4 we've done in class, right? There's a couple more that we've also talked about but not done yet. So besides those 4, do you guys remember some of the other ones we've talked about? Users. And another one we've mentioned, but it's one you may not think about. Views. Yes, who said that? Views. Very good. Constraints. Right? Lots of different things. So tables, records, databases, fields, users, views, constraints. We're going to start with views. We're going to start with creating a view, talking about what is a view. Okay, but I just wanted to throw that up there so we can kind of remember that. So here we go. I'm going to save this as my queries.sql. Okay. All right, what is a view exactly? The closest way that I can think of to describe a view is it's like a stored query. Like a stored query. Okay, there's a thing called a stored procedure. That's different. Okay, that's a different thing. This is kind of like that though. It's a stored query. So the way it works is, let's take a look at the TAL database here, use TAL. And I'm going to select star from rep. Well then, looks like I need to nuke my database. Let's do that real quick. I must have been messing around in there and deleted something. All right, use TAL, select star from rep. There we go. Okay, this is the rep table. We all have seen it, we know it, we learn it, we live it, we love it. What I'm going to do is create a view which is a viewport into this table, okay? And it's only going to contain that. Now, when I say contain that, look at it exactly the way I'm showing you on the screen here. That blue border is the viewport into this table. It is not a different table. It's not a copy of the table. It's not a snapshot of what the table looked like 5 minutes ago. It is the live table, okay? It's no different than looking, it's dark in here, but looking out the window and seeing a mountain or something. When you look out the window, you're seeing the one mountain. You're not seeing a second mountain because you're looking out a window. It's a view to that mountain. So a view is a view into a database. That make sense? All right, so if I close that out, let's create a view. Creating a view is very easy. Let's go back to right here. What do we do when we're dealing with structure? We say the thing we're going to do, create, say the thing we're creating, a view, give it a name. We'll call it like rep2 or something like that, right? And then, so that's say the thing we're going to do, say the thing we're doing with to, view, and give it a name, rep2, as, and then I literally just write whatever query I want right here. So the query I want is select last name and then first name. Okay, so select last name, comma first name from rep. That's it. If I do that, that'll actually create a view called rep2. So let's take a look at that. Now if I show the tables, there's rep2 right there. Now that looks like a separate table, right? And if I say select star from it, whoops, I meant to do rep2. It looks like a separate table with the last name and the first name in it. It is not. Okay, let's make sure that's very clear. It is not a separate table. All right, and here I'll prove it to you. Watch this. Delete from rep2, the view, rep2, where last name equals Campos. If I do that, we're going to lose Rafael Campos from the view, but select star from rep2. He's not there anymore. The reason he's not there anymore is really because he's not in the rep table. Yeah, there we go. He's gone. Okay? It's the same thing. It's the same place. The view is a viewport into the table. Anything I change in the view changes the table. Because I'm not changing the view, I'm changing the table.
So if they're the same thing essentially, then what's the benefit?
Oh, we're getting there. There's lots of benefits. We'll get to that. Okay? We'll get there. It's a good question, but we will get there. Okay. So when we get to users, we'll see how this can be very useful. All right, so now this viewport into there, first of all, look at this. If I try this trick, delete from rep2, where rep num equals 45, which is Hoytian, what do you expect to happen?
It'll get rid of.
It's going to give you an error.
It will actually give me an error. The reason it will give me an error is because the rep2 view does not have access to the rep num field. So I can only delete from the view, which again is the table, stuff that exists in the view. Okay? So if I run that, I'll get an error because there is no column called rep num in the rep2 view. Now if I delete the whole table though, the whole view, delete from rep2, I just deleted the whole rep table. Semicolon. It's gone by deleting that view. Yes, sir.
I might be getting ahead of you here, but so can you join a view to a table?
Yes. And we won't be covering that. The question was, can I join a view to a table? The answer is yes. We won't be doing that though. So the question was, if I delete something from rep, will it affect the view? Yes, because the view is looking into rep. Whatever you see in view is coming directly from rep. So right now we've deleted everything, but to be clear, what happens when I say select star from rep2, All I'm really saying is this. That's all I'm saying. It's exactly the same thing as if I typed that. It's exactly the same thing. But we've given it a name, and now it's a stored query, right? That make sense? All right, so let me reset the database here. Yeah, very convenient. All right, so now that should have wiped out the view as well. So use towel, show tables. Okay, the rep 2 is gone. Now let's go ahead and create it again. Show tables, and there's rep 2 again. Now again, rep 2 is not a snapshot of what rep looked like when I created that view. Because the moment I say select star from rep 2, what it's really doing is just running this query right here. That's all that's happening. That's it. Okay, so it's sort of a shorthand for doing that. Okay, yes?
When you show tables, it looks like Rep 2 is just a table, so if you're going into jobs there,
Ye-
where you can just show view.
Yeah. So the concern, it's a valid concern, is your tables and views are listed together in there, and they look the same, and you might think, oh, rep 2 I can do whatever I want with, and not realize you're affecting other tables, right? So most of the time, so you're asking if you can do something like this, right? Show views or something like that? Yeah, sadly, no. But the way I get around that is if I'm using a view, all of my table names in my databases start with TBL. So I would not have a table called rep. I'd have TBL, capital R, lowercase EP, right? I'd have TBL customer, TBL item. I'd have VW rep. So mine would all have names like that. But in this, we're going with what the book has. So that's how I would typically deal with that, number one. Number two, I rarely do use views. All right, I'm going to show you a good use case for them, but typically I don't use them because they are a little risky, right? But if with the right security measures, they can be very secure and very safe and very useful. So we'll talk about some of those in a minute. Well, is that your same question too?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now this is a view. We can treat it like a table in the sense that I can drop it, right? Drop view, whatever. That's how I get rid of it. Now, dropping the view does not drop the table. Just altering the records will alter the table because they are the same records. But the view is a separate entity, and it's technically empty until you say select star from rep 2, and then it immediately just runs that stored query, right? So we're going to go ahead and drop view rep 2 and show tables, and it's gone. Now, you can actually make a view from a join, okay? Which is different from what you're asking. You're asking about joining a table to a view, which is also legitimate. But we're going to make a join and make it into a view. So let's say I wanted to have this query right here. Select customer name and rep. We'll concatenate it. Concat rep dot first name, the space, rep dot last name, and from customer join rep on rep dot rep num equals customer dot rep num. Right? Everybody follow what I did there? Just plain old join. Okay. So let's say I want. There's my query. That's what I want. Okay. That's the output I want. But I want that to be a view that I can just call that view. So I'll leave part of your question a minute ago. What's the advantage of a view? Here's part of it. Right now, if I wanted to get that view, I have to copy that. I have to write that query every time. Well, if I create a view that's called customer create view, called cust rep or something like that. I don't know what we'll call it. As that, now all I have to do is just select star from cust rep anytime I want to see that data. And it's the current live data. So it saves me from having to retype this big, long, nasty query. right? So it's like a stored query. That's not even a security thing, but it's just a convenience thing. But there are security things too, because we're control freaks, right? All right, now, let me show you one other thing. I'm going to drop view cust rep, and I'm going to recreate it slightly differently. Notice these fields here, kind of hideous, right? This one especially. So what we're going to do, we know the little trick where I can alias them, right? By saying as whatever. So we know the trick, as I said a second ago, about aliasing these table names. We can do that, but we can also create that as part of the view. So right here, customer rep, in parentheses, I can give this field a name, right? And we'll just call it customer. And I can give this field a name. We'll just call it rep, like that. So now when I create it, it actually creates, again, this view is very much like a table. The difference is it's a table that the data that's in the table is put there real time when you query that table. It's put there real time. You're viewing it real time. Again, it's not even really put there. That's probably not the best way to put it. Okay, but it's being viewed real time somewhere else. But now we have labels for it. So if I put that in there, and now I do a select star from cust rep, and now I have this nice clean display that's easy to see. Okay. Now, remember last time we tried to delete where, you know, rep last name was Campos or something like that? Well, let's try this. Delete from cust rep where, let's try customer equals toys galore. What do you think is going to happen? Gives us an error. And the reason it gives us an error is because it's a join. So this is a little layer of security here. Okay, you can't delete from a view that is a join. Because if I'm trying to delete toys galore, but I'm joining it to another table, and so what do you want me to go in there and delete that record too? What do you want me to do? Right? So it's confused. So you'll get an error. So now I wouldn't call this security, right? But it's a nice little extra thing that if you have a view like this, especially if the users only have access to this view, then there's a relative amount of security there, okay? All right, so any questions about views? Okay, so that's the short version of views. Make sure you read the book. Remember, this is a hybrid class, so part of the requirement is to read the book, and you'll notice on all of your chapter exams or the module exams, there are questions that we don't talk about in class. Right, there's usually a small handful of those. Those come right out of the actual book's question bank that I didn't even write those questions. Okay, so next up, the other part 2 of Control Freak is user privileges. Okay, so we can control user access to the nth degree.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we could totally do that. So first of all, let's learn how to create a user. There's lots of ways to create users. Typically now, in the real world, for me, when I access a database, I don't access it on the command line. I access it using a tool called phpMyAdmin. Okay. There's also one called Workbench, which we'll be looking at in class. When I was working for a company that had a SQL Server database, I used the SQL Server Management Studio, also known as SSMS. So I'm always using some sort of tool that lets me interact with the database. And things like creating users are a little more point and clicky. And so on the command line, I don't do that very often. So we are going to look at it on the command line so we can just get the basic idea of it. But there's lots of ways to do what I'm about to do. This is just one way, right? So what we're trying to do is create a user. So what do? We say the thing we're going to do, create. Create. What are we creating? User. And we give it a name, okay? This is the first time, for you non-Linux folks, this is the first time that case sensitivity will matter, okay? Even for non-Linux people, this will matter. If you're on a Linux box, you're already used to it, if you're on the Linux command line there, okay? But on the other machines, case sensitivity wasn't an issue. This time it will be. So we're going to create a user called Beavis. I'm going to give him a capital B and a lowercase rest of his name there. And then I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything on my notes here before we get into this? Think we're good? Okay. All right, so create user called Beavis. And then we need to give him a password. So there's a key phrase here called identified by, and then whatever his password is. We'll go with password. Okay? So that line of code will create a user called Beavis, and it'll give him a password called password. Probably because I already have Beavis, I think. There we go. He was already in there. So I just dropped him and then recreated him. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. All right, so the battery crisis averted. We've got our user called Beavis here. Now I've actually created another batch file that will log Beavis in. So MySQL 2, this one on the right is Beavis. And the one, where'd it go? Oh, it's on full screen, that's why. And this is admin on the left, this is root. So here's Beavis. So show tables, sorry, use show databases is what I meant to say. Show databases, and there's nothing, okay? We haven't given any permissions yet. Now, real quick on the left here in admin, full screen that for just a second. I'm going to show you something that is for looking only. Okay? Do not mess with this database I'm about to show you. You have a database that's built in called MySQL. Use MySQL. Never ever manipulate anything in this database. Please. Okay? If I show the tables, you'll see at the very bottom there this table called user. All right? If I select star from user, it's going to be messy. Star from user, pretty ugly, right? But if I select just the user field from user, you'll see the users. There's Beavis. Now, I repeat, do not edit this table. You might be tempted to go, oh, if I need to add a user, just insert into this table. Do not do that. But I just want to show you that Beavis is in there, right? Just want to make sure you see that he's in there. Okay, so I'm getting out of that table, back to Tal. Actually, we'll stay out. We'll stay just right where we're at here for a minute. Now what I want to do, let's get off full screen here. I'm going to grant Beavis some permissions, right? So I'm going to grant, let's give him select privileges, okay? And by select privileges, I don't mean we're going to select some privileges for him. I mean, we're going to give them the permission, the ability to do select statements, right? And then I'm going to grant select on some specific table or tables or database or databases, right? So I'm going to start with the Tal database dot whatever table. So I could say star, which is all tables, okay? Or I could just say on the rep table, for example. So I've just said grant select on tal.rep, which means that when I'm finished with this command, I'm not quite there yet, but when I'm finished with this command, he will have permission to write select statements, to write select queries on the rep table, right? So grant select on tal.rep to Beavis. That's his username. Yes?
So does this also have to be case sensitive?
No, the only part that was, sorry, I should have clarified that. The only part that's case sensitive is the username itself. So if I try to do this on lowercase Beavis, whoa, that was weird. What the heck? Did I hit the insert button? What is going on there? Try that again. B. I'm typing a B, folks. That's me hitting the B key. What is going on? Okay, we're going to exit out of here. You saw that? Nothing was... Oh, mama, what happened here? I don't even know. That was weird. Okay, we got it on film, though, whatever it was. All right, so let's get this guy over here. Okay, so let's try that again. Grant select on on tile.rep 2. So what I was getting at was this is a different user than that. Right? You looked away right when I said this and that. Do you want me to show you again?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. This is a different user than this. That's the only part that's case sensitive. Okay? Everything else, the command doesn't have to be, just the username. Okay, so grant select on tile.rep to Beavis. Done. Now if I come over here to Beavis and I do show tables or show databases again, now we can see the tile database. And if I say use tile and I say show tables, he can see the rep table. If I say select star from rep, he can do that, right? This is Beavis now, that's on the full screen. But if I say delete from rep, he can't. Beavis does not have delete permissions. So why is this useful? This goes back to the question again about views and their value as a control freak. Well, maybe I don't want Beavis seeing the commission rates, right? Because he's still new. So maybe I'm going to write a view that prevents him from seeing that, right? So I write a view called rep num that's got rep num, their last name and their first name, and that's it maybe. That view we already looked at. So let's go back to this one over here. This is root, use tile, and show tables. Is rep 2 still there? It is not. So let's create real quick. Create view rep 2, and we'll say as select first name, last name, city, state, street, postal code, and I also want the rep num there, right? I believe that's everything from the rep table. Yeah, except for the commission and the rate, which is the part we're hiding from him, right? So I'm going to create that view from rep, and we're going to put that in the admin portion here, which is not that one, right here. So now if I show tables, taggles, there we go. Okay, so now this is admin here. Let's get Beavis off of full screen for a minute. Put admin on full screen. So what I'm going to do, I want to remove his privileges from the rep table now. Right? So the way I remove it, the way I revoke his privileges is I revoke select from, on rep.tile from Beavis. Okay, I'm revoking this privilege on this table from this user. Grant defined for, oh, I did that. I almost did that a minute ago. What am I doing? I did the same thing a second ago. I started to do it anyway. Tile.rep, thanks. There we go. So now if I go back to Beavis real quick, he should not be able to see that anymore. And he can't. All right, now let's give him permissions for that rep 2. So we're going to grant select on tile.rep2 to Beavis. Right, so now Beavis show tables. There's his rep 2, select star from rep 2, and sure enough you can see everything but the stuff we want to hide from him. Right? So I know I'm going relatively quick here, but this is being recorded, and these lecture notes here, there actually will be in Canvas tonight, as if you just click on that today's lecture. Anyway, so the other thing I want to show you though with permissions, and we are on Beavis right now, right? Let's go back to admin here. Let's go ahead and revoke that privilege again. Revoke select on tile.rep2 from Beavis. Now I can give him permissions in bulk. I can give him specific details. So for example, because I had a view there, that's fine. I could do that, but I could have done this. I could have said grant select on tile.rep in parentheses first name, last name. Now I'm saying he only gets select privileges on the rep table for those two fields. The end. To Beavis. Now, of course, I got an error in my syntax. Oh, yeah, because I put this parenthesis in the wrong place. Sorry. That goes over here, I think. That, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. First name, we'll find out. Last name. Yeah. Sorry about that. So I told you, I usually use a tool for this stuff, right? So grant select first name, last name on tal.rep to Beavis. Now I look in this thing here. This is Beavis now that we're looking at. And if I show tables, he can see rep, no problem. If I say select star from rep, he can't. He's only allowed to see first name and last name. So he can say select first name from rep. He can do that, or last name, or both, but he can't do select star. Okay? So we have a lot of control over the user here, right? Also, if he tries to describe the table, it only shows the fields that we allow him to see. Okay? It's very restrictive. All right? So now, let's go ahead and revoke select on tal.rep. I almost did it again, rep.tal, from Beavis. If we wanted to get crazy, we could grant him all privileges on all tables, on all databases. Okay, here's what that would look like. Grant grant all, that's the privileges I'm granting, on, I could say tal.star, that would just be all tables in the tal database, or I could say solmaris.star or something like that, right? I could also say star.star. The left star is all the databases, the right star is all the tables in each of those databases. Okay, to Beavis. Dear Beavis. And now suddenly Beavis is just a little bit too powerful. Show databases. Oh, he needs, for that big of a change, he needs to log back in. All right, he's back in. Show databases. There's everything. Use tal. Show tables. He can drop a tables. Let's have him drop that view, okay? So drop view rep2. He just dropped it, but it's gone, like, from the database. There's only one database, right? We're all logged into the same database. He just dropped it. So if I go back to admin and try to see it, use tal, show tables, it'll be gone, okay? But I have all this control over those users, right? So I can, again, if I want to revoke that, revoke all on star.star from Beavis. So I give power to, I take power from, right? I always revoke or grant on the table or whatever, and I give it to the person or take it from the person. So now he should have no more power. You'll have to exit out for that to reboot. And show databases. Nothing. It's back to being powerless. In fact, let's just get rid of him. Drop user Beavis. And now Beavis is gone. If I look in use MySQL, again, don't play in here. Select user from user. We'll see that he's gone. No longer in there. Okay? Don't ever delete directly from that table. So there's a lot more to permissions than we will cover in class. And when we get to Workbench, I'm going to show you how to do it in Workbench. And it's a little bit easier. It's just click on the permissions you want them to have or not have. But just for the record, I can say grant drop privileges, right? I can say grant update privileges, grant insert privileges. I can say grant update only on these fields. I can say grant insert. I mean, I can anything I want. Anything you can do, you can grant or revoke that privilege. Okay? Yes?
Is there a way to list what you are doing?
Yes. The question is, can you list his privileges? And it is, I have to remember that command. There is a command for that. Let me dig it up, and I'll put it in the lecture notes. I think it's show grants. Let's create them real quick. So create user Beavis identified by, and the password is case sensitive as well, Julissa, to your question earlier. Username and password are case sensitive. All right, and we'll grant select on tall.rep to Beavis. And I'm probably going to butcher this, so let me just see if I can remember. But I believe it is show grants on Beavis. Show grant. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. Do you know what it is, Andrew? Do you remember? You ever used it? Yeah, I can't remember. I'll look it up, but there is a way to do it, and it will show everything that they've been given. Okay? So I will write a note to check that out right here. Yeah.
Can you allow them to make users themselves?
Yes, you can also give them permission to create other users. Yep. So, and a lot of that stuff is covered in the book, which we won't get to in class. But yeah, you can give users the permission to create other users. Yep. Yeah.
So on some of the applications I've seen, they'll have like one user that the application uses
Yes.
to access the entire database.
Yeah, so
Are
that,
they advised to do it that route or per like role or per actual database user?
so the way I do it, typically when I'm dealing with a MySQL database, 99.99% of the time, it is on a web page, right? And so I will create a user for that database that only the code uses. So in the code, when I connect to the database, I pass in those user credentials. So it'll be, some weird name like, web page user number 2 or whatever, right? And it'll have its own password, and nobody will ever log in with that. It'll only just happen in the code. And so for every database, I typically have that. For testing on my local machines, I may have like a master username and password that can access every database. That's just for local stuff though, but when I push it up to the web, I'm a little more secure. And my web page doesn't need to necessarily insert stuff depending on what it's doing. And so I'll block anything but select privileges. Now, sometimes you're making a web app that does insert in the database. So you got to give that user the right permissions. Yeah, good questions. Any others? Going once?